Before we get to this week's episode of Business Over Brew, let me tell you about our sponsors of this program, Roberts Motors. You know the name. Roberts Motors has been around since 1949, the value store in Alton. Just great people to work with. If you are in the market for a new or pre-owned vehicle, maybe you need service on your vehicle, Roberts Motors is the place to go. John Roberts, Sam Roberts, the whole team out there at Roberts will really take care of you. They've been contributing to our community in a positive way for such a long time. So if you have a need for a vehicle, maybe you just want to look, maybe you want to browse, you can go to robertsmotors.com, check out their website. All their inventory is on there. Hey, stop by the lot, say hi, take a look at everything that they have, maybe the new Ford Ranger or new Ford Bronco. Lots of great stuff on the lot. It's been an interesting year in the car business because of COVID-19. Things are starting to get back to normal. So if you've been waiting to get back into a new vehicle, now is the time. You don't have to wait any longer. Visit Roberts Motors and get yourself in a new vehicle. Welcome to Business Over Brew. Pleased to be joined in this episode by Dr. Ryan Bemis, Bemis Family Chiropractic. Dr. Bemis, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's just start here. Tell us a little bit about it seems like if your last name's Bemis and you're in the Riverbend area, you almost have to be a chiropractor.
It seems to be that way. I hear that all the time. My family has been in this area for since 1947. My grandfather started down on Broadway. Across from the old Wedge Bank down there, and today we have 7 chiropractors that we're all related, dads, brothers, sisters, uncles, cousins, I'm a 4th generation chiropractor. So my great grandfather became a chiropractor in 1915 and practiced in upstate New York, and then my grandfather came to town in the late 40s, and we've been here ever since then.
1915, I think probably the perception in the world of chiropractic's probably changed a little bit since then.
It's changed
in the last
a lot.
100 years.
It has changed a lot. There's a lot of stereotypes that go with chiropractors and things like that, but the technology has really changed. Chiropractic really focuses on the 3 principles, which is science, art, and philosophy. But the philosophy is how you communicate with the patient and how they're feeling. The science is understanding the anatomy of the body, but the art is really the art's changed a little bit. We do have different technology that we can adjust patients with nowadays. We still use the traditional hands-on approach, but there's other techniques that are available. If patients are a little bit more timid to come in, or they don't want to be adjusted the old-fashioned way, there are different technologies that we can use on them. So.
Talk about, you mentioned before we started the cameras rolling that one of the cool things about doing it as long as you have and your family history of chiropractic, you actually helped a patient that your grandfather had helped.
Yes, just yesterday, this is a patient that's been with our family, and we're thinking right around since 1950. So she's been in our family for almost 71 years. She's 92 years of age. I took care of her husband. I take care of her entire family. But it was good to reminisce when she came in yesterday. She's still sharp as a tack. She still remembers a lot from back then. And her and her husband were married in 1948, and they remember going to my grandfather just about 2 years into their marriage. So put it right around that time.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So was there ever a possible different career choice for you, or was it always, I'm going to be a chiropractor and that's it?
Well, no, I was not. To tell you the truth, I was not set on being a chiropractor all the time. I actually wanted to be some sort of airline pilot. In about my junior year in high school, one of my friends from the family knew an airline pilot, and first question he asked me was, how much do you like math? And I said, I can't stand math. And he says, well, you don't want to be a pilot. So I did look at the profession long and hard, and I just felt that this was the best fit. And I really do enjoy taking care of my patients and getting them to feel better.
How many years is it for you now?
I'm starting my 23rd year.
23rd year. What do you remember about day one?
I was scared. I didn't know what to think. Chiropractic is more about, you have to have a real good bedside manner. You got to really relate to the patients. I've always been real good with being able to open up with people and talk to them about the profession. But the biggest thing is just getting used to adjusting. When you first start, it's very difficult. When you first start, you have to adjust so many patients when you're in college, just on normal people off the street, just to kind of get. That's why they call it practice, ironically. But that was probably the biggest thing that you build on as you get better, is learning how to adjust the patients a little bit better.
So when you started your own office, or when you were in with somebody else, or?
When I first started, I was with my father,
Okay.
Who's Dr. Frank Bemis, and I practiced with him for about 15 years, and I've been out on my own for just about 8 years now.
That had to be somewhat helpful to start that way, because then you're worried about the chiropractic side of things, but probably not as much about the business side of things from the get-go.
There's always a plus and a negative. When you come into practice, you can either start on your own and just kind of roll the dice, or you can become what we call an associate in the profession, and you can learn from another doctor, a senior doctor, for example. And that senior doctor can tell you, basically learn the ropes of the business side of it, get to know the patients, learn the rapport. So it's really a good suggestion for chiropractors that are actually just coming into the profession to really learn under a senior doctor so that they can understand exactly what's going on.
And then on the other hand, maybe the con side, it's always tricky, or can be tricky, mixing business with family relationships, especially one as close as your father.
It is. That was probably one of the biggest. It's there's business, and then there's personal. And when it came to making my own decision of what I wanted to do, it basically came down to the business side of it. And I could not be any more happier than where I am right now. We've been doing a great business out there. But I do, I have discussions with my brother and my uncle all the time, and different members of our family. Try to get together with them once a month, have breakfast, things like that, just to discuss what's going on in the profession. So
very cool. Talk a little bit about just some of the misconceptions about chiropractic. There is some fear, I guess, out there amongst the general population.
There is, when I was starting with you this afternoon, and we were discussing a little bit before, probably the biggest roadblock that we're facing right now with the profession is, if you're a little bit timid to go to a chiropractor, you go on a video like YouTube or something like that, and you see these videos of these chiropractors just popping and cracking people 16 different ways, and it doesn't have to be like that. A lot of times patients are a little scared to come into our office just because they don't want to be manipulated in that way. There's a lot of other techniques that we utilize in our office so that they're a little bit more gentle. I remember just last week I had a guy that came in, mid-30s guy. One of his friends brought him in that's been a patient of mine a long time. This guy was scared to death to be in my office. And the guy was trying to tell him in front of me, this guy's okay,
right.
He's gentle. And I told him, I said, by the end of the adjustment, you're going to walk out of here and say, geez, that was it. And literally that's the expression that he had. So it was a very easy adjustment on him. And there's one of the best jokes that I like to tell about another stereotype is, how many chiropractors does it take to screw in a light bulb? One, but it takes 46 visits to do it. Now only chiropractors can tell that story, or that joke. But that's another stereotype, is that once you go to a chiropractor, you always have to continue to go back. And we have different types of plan for different types of people. I see some patients every couple of years. I see some patients once a month. I see some patients just when they symptomatically flare up. But it all depends on the patient and how they're actually feeling.
I've always thought that chiropractic was definitely the best place to start if you're experiencing pain. There's a time when pharmaceuticals can play a role that I'm sure is helpful, or you may require surgery, but a lot of times your ailment can be fixed without either of those.
So when I first started, a term that they use in the medical profession a lot is called a gatekeeper. That's typically the way the insurance termed for your medical doctor. You know, they're the ones that you have to go to first to determine what specialty you want to go into, or what type of things would be right for you for what's going on. And believe it or not, a lot of patients are looking to us as the gatekeepers, because there's a lot of different conditions that we can treat. You know, we're neuromusculoskeletal doctors. We deal with the nerves, we deal with the muscles, we deal with the bones. And a lot of times, one of the funniest things is patients come into my office all the time and they say, this may sound crazy, but do you treat this or do you treat that? And actually, it's a very common condition that we see all the time. So we are finding that a lot of patients are coming to see us first. And there are multiple times where I have to refer a patient back to their medical doctor.
Sure.
I got to refer them to pain management. Sometimes, unfortunately, I have to refer patients for even surgery. So it's not one of those things where you come into my office. You know, we try to do what's best for the patient.
Sure. One of those things we were talking about before the cameras came on was if you have a colicky baby, the chiropractic can even help with that.
So I had years ago, I had an adjusting table in my office that was actually a little horse, okay? And it functioned as two things. It functioned as an educational tool, meaning patients would come in and say, you adjust kids? And so then that would start the conversation, because a lot of people don't realize how often they don't understand, why do you adjust children? If you think about kids at a young age, the sports they do, they fall out of trees, they fall off of bikes, they do all these things. A lot of times they put themselves through more trauma than adults do. But going back to colic, I have patients that bring in colicky babies, ear infections. Some parents are having difficulty with their children wetting the bed, things like that. And it's all about being able to adjust the spine to get the nervous system to function better. Back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, a colicky baby was always thought of as being, you know, a very gassy baby, or a lot of gas building up in their stomach. And you know, what I've always thought of a colicky baby is the only way for a baby to really communicate is by crying. And if something is not right in the body, they're going to communicate by crying. Some other things is sometimes babies tend to hold their head to one side or the other. When they're breastfeeding, it's a little bit more uncomfortable on one side than the other. Those are all very common things that chiropractic can treat, and we're very successful at it.
And I think you said the youngest patient you had was 2 days old.
Well, I adjusted all my children when they were 1 day old.
Okay,
but
well,
I have to say,
day,
as a regular patient,
but you gave them a discount, probably.
Of course, of course. But my regular, I had a 2 day old come in about 3 years ago, and I adjusted her. And that video is actually on our Facebook Bemis Family Chiropractic page. That the father videoed the entire adjustment that I gave to this little 2 day old. So
very cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, you've got an interesting building that you're in now too that's got kind of a historical significance to it.
It was originally built as Ken's Pizza. A lot of times patients will come in, very rarely, and say, this was an old Ken's Pizza building. And I think it was built in the very early 80s. And we were going through Goodwill a couple of years ago, and lo and behold, there was a Ken's Pizza beer mug on the shelf for $0.25. And we went ahead and bought it.
Gotta have that.
And it's my candy tray up on my front counter. Very few patients catch that when they come in, but it's been several businesses since then. And I purchased the building outright, I think about 4 years ago. And you know, we've made some renovations on it. We've put a new roof on it. We've done some nice design things for it. So things are working out. It's in a great location right next to Target there.
On the business side, not so much the chiropractic side, but what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned since you've been doing it?
I would say insurance companies. That's probably the biggest eye opener. Insurance companies are becoming a little bit more friendly towards chiropractors, but our insurance write-offs, a lot of times we have to take a pretty big hit when we're taking care of patients. they don't want to pay for the x-rays, or they don't want to pay a percentage of the exam. That's probably the biggest roadblock that I've learned to deal with. And we unfortunately, or I should say fortunately for the patients, we do accept all major insurance carriers, but a lot of times I'm doing it for the patient and not for my benefit,
right?
Because there's a pretty significant write-off with a lot of patients that I do take care of, and that's probably the hardest point that I've had to learn in the business side of it since coming into practice.
What's one thing that you wish more people knew about your business that they don't?
Don't be scared of chiropractors. It's like I was discussing before. There's a lot of stereotypes with chiropractic, and it's very simple to come in and just have a talk with us. I offer free consultations, but there's a lot of fear with chiropractors, and they just not sure if they should be there or not. I have several good relationships with even medical doctors in town that refer me a lot of patients. Just because they get it, they understand exactly what they do, and I really appreciate them for doing that, because there's a lot of times where you'll go into a medical doctor and complain of lower back pain, and a lot of times they're like, well, we can suggest therapy, or we can suggest medication, and a lot of times they are open to, well, have you ever thought about chiropractic? And it's come a long way since then.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the profession certainly. I think just in the last probably 10 or 15 years, the perception has seemingly changed quite a bit.
It's changed a lot. There were several medical doctors when I first started 23 years ago that did not want to have anything with chiropractors at all, and they're referring patients to us left and right. So it has come a long way. I think there's a lot of clearing up the air, so to speak. They understand what we do. One of the biggest things that I like to do is I like to write letters to a medical doctor and explain to them, thanks for your referral. This is what I'm treating Mrs. Jones for example. This is what I found. Here are x-rays. I try to communicate both ways with the patient, and the patients really appreciate that too.
Sure.
So that they understand why I'm treating them for what they're doing there.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. I was going to talk, I was going to spend at least a segment on Vikings football, but we'll just have to wrap it up with.
I love my Vikings. I do. I wish they were playing in a couple of days for the Super Bowl, but there's always next year.
Next year, right.
Yeah, they're thinking about getting rid of Kirk Cousins, which I think would be a real good thing for us.
So we did talk a little Vikings at least, but if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Our phone number is 618-433-9333. You can find us right at the top of Google for the search bar of chiropractors in the area. We're on Facebook. I'm redesigning my entire webpage right now, and you can find that at bemisfamilychiropractic.com.
Great. Well, we appreciate the time. Thanks for all you do for the Riverbend community and being a business owner that really does care about this community and does a lot for it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr. Bemis.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Yep.